And the first primary of this 24 campaign is now 5 days out. And we're a long ways from November 2016, when, as you see there, Nikki Haley was being sworn in as President Trump's choice to be his administration's voice on the world stage. At the time, he called her a proven deal maker and touted her joining his team. Now Haley is basically the one candidate posing possible peril for Trump, and he is arguing that she's so liberal no Republican should pick her, which actually cuts against why he picked her for that key job in the first place.
We have an opportunity to get this right. And I know we'll get it right.
I don't know that she's a Democrat, but she's very close.
I trust you. I trust every single one of you. You know how to do this. You know Iowa starts it. You know that you correct it.
She's far too close for you.
Trump's campaign is also plowing money into those very attacks. Reporting shows he began with paid ads weeks ago, and they've turned to personal attacks. Now, Trump's allies keep claiming this race is over before it's begun. And as I've told you, Beltway pundits often repeat that same false narrative. The truth is, New Hampshire is where some campaigns actually take off, and we're very early in this process. Candidates who lose Iowa can find their footing in New Hampshire, and some go on to win the nomination. And Trump knows that because in his first run, it was he, then candidate Trump in 2016, who lost Iowa and then joined the comeback tradition in New Hampshire, which votes next week. That tradition actually goes back a long way, like in '92. Clinton finished third in Iowa, just like Haley did this week. And he faced so many headwinds that reporters started the premature obituaries, looking at the polling and the problems. And the reports at the time said his New Hampshire pitch was basically his last-ditch effort to revive a flagging and crumbling presidential campaign. That was in the New York Times. The narrative around that Southern Governor Clinton, well, it was even harsher than what we're hearing about why this Southern Governor, Haley, is already being written off or will only be a temporary problem on Trump's march to the nomination. Clinton's aides, like a younger James Carville, well, they pressed on. They didn't listen to that punditry or treat it as true. In fact, I'm going to show you how then a fairly unknown but somewhat interesting aide, James Carville, was calling out Fox News founder Roger Ailes and supposedly sleazy tactics, while Clinton was saying he would not only get off the ropes, he vowed in a very famous New Hampshire comeback that he would fight until the last dog dies.
Let me tell you something, folks. They say I'm on the ropes now.
We got 6 more days to go. And don't forget who the real enemy is in here. And don't forget what we really campaign against. Thank y'all very much.
They say I'm on the rope because other people have questioned my life.
It's about George Bush and Roger Ailes and Georgette Mossbacher and the whole sleazy little cabal of them.
And if you'll give it to me, I won't be like George Bush. I'll never forget who gave me a second chance, and I'll be there for you till the last dog dies. And I want you to remember.
We went running through the archives there. That's decades old. I don't know if you couldn't hear what I couldn't hear, but he ends that speech there, Bill Clinton, talking about fighting till the last dog dies. Clinton faced all that negativity, and he actually turned it around with a big comeback in New Hampshire. Some recall it as his Biggie Smalls moment. Clinton rose from that adversity with a smile, practically rapping, "Damn right I like the campaign I live because I went from negative to positive." Now, that's the comeback part. The negativity of politics and the know-it-all Beltway elites only got worse and more smug over time. The same people relying on these obviously inconclusive or broken polls, or right now hyping Trump as basically walking away with this, telling you the race is over before any actual voters actually weigh in a primary, these people are the ones that get interfering with our democracy. Remember, we've only had one small caucus this week. And these are the same people, and it's worth keeping this in mind if you care about what's happening or are interested in what might happen. These are the same types of people who tried to drum Kerry and Biden out of their races. Politicos may recall John Kerry, of course, won the nomination the year that he ran, but like Clinton, he had a very rough set of patches, and he was at one time polling in the single digits, and the Beltway was quick to try to short-circuit democracy or people weighing in. They were proclaiming before any votes were cast that because Kerry polled poorly, whatever that meant, and because he was seen as a failure by those often wrong Beltway elites, he must, I'll show you what they were saying, accept the fact that the game is over. This was in a piece called Kerry's Quagmire in December 2003, before any votes. Quote, the last time Kerry was engaged in this hopeless mission, he was dressed in fatigues and running around Southeast Asia. Now, that punditry was not only in poor taste, it was proven wrong. I'm just showing you a little bit, but this went on and on. One right-leaning writer, Nikki, channeled the smug Beltway elitism to announce in December 2003 that Kerry, quote, faces not just defeat, but utter humiliation in the New Hampshire primary. The withdrawal contest, they dubbed it. They were so certain about how this was all going to go. And they were wrong, wrong, wrong.
Well, I love New Hampshire. Iowa, I love you. I love you.
Kerry was able to come back in the Democratic primary. But this is one broken tradition that happens in both parties. You may recall McCain as a prominent Republican and presidential candidate, but that was only after an effort to drum him out of the race. The reports were that he was struggling, that his bid would likely fail. An elections guru you may have heard of, Charlie Cook, was proclaiming for all intents and purposes McCain's campaign is over, a narrative that hardened on TV.
John McCain's presidential campaign has been struggling for months.
For Senator John McCain, it's been one piece of bad news after another. Just last week, dozens of other staffers were let go after dismal fundraising left the campaign with a paltry $2 million in the bank.
If this was a fight, they'd stop it. The Republican political base don't trust John McCain.
Charlie Cook of the National Journal wrote it this way: for all intents and purposes, McCain's campaign is over.
Was it over? I showed you that quote there. And the point tonight is to bring some big skepticism to the same routine when you hear it today about predictions and polls. It's the same broken process, and it goes beyond people being wrong. As everybody knows, and the reason why people talk about media bias is that sometimes if a media and political narrative becomes so powerful and so repeated, it then actually does shape the external world. So something that was wrong, declaring someone a loser, can actually become true. And that's the opposite of course, what any good journalism should do. We're not supposed to announce things we don't know and then have the world go towards that direction. So voters and donors who believe these narratives may actually abandon a candidate because they've been so thoroughly deemed a loser already that they think it's over. But other times, as I've shown you, the voters have a way of punching back. And that's especially relevant for all this hand-wringing you may have heard about Biden lately. It was just 4 years ago where he first crashed in Iowa and then did so poorly in New Hampshire he failed to win a single delegate. And some pundits and some people in the press were basically yelling, bye, bye, Biden, after those early failures in those states. That includes the left-wing magazine The Nation and the right-leaning New York Post, which was hyping a panic by Biden donors, feeding the idea that after that disastrous New Hampshire result, it would be over for him. Take Politico, which says it is nonpartisan. They say they're not going left or right, but they piled on blood in the water with Biden limping away from New Hampshire, the whole viability of his campaign in question. Now remember, that was only 2 states that had voted. It is true that Biden had poor showings, but reporting that fact is very different from saying it means that you know what's going to happen in the remaining 48 states because you're so smart and you read polls so well. Again, some of this is happening now, and that's why I'm sharing this with you tonight, because we're not saying the future means Trump will definitely not produce the results of the polls that may show him in the lead. What we're saying is this is no way to do democracy. And as for drubbing Biden out, of course, political TV was hitting the same notes.
Is it too late for him to reset his campaign? No one's gone this far without a big victory.
No one has gone this far, finishing 4th and 5th and vastly under expectations.
Joe Biden seems to be gone, and Democrats are sorting out who is going to replace him.
Joe Biden only getting 9% here in New Hampshire, is a real problem for his campaign here.
Nobody 6 months ago thought we'd be sitting here with Bernie Sanders on his way to the nomination. He's on his way to the nomination.
Say it ain't Joe. Biden's spectacular collapse as Dem leader.
How often do you see Van Jones and Fox News agreeing? Well, they're agreeing in the mistaken effort that I just showed you has happened more cycles than not, where all of this polling and prediction is wrong and also can get in the way of the process. Now, Trump may hope that his party and the narrative now think this is already over after one state, even though Iowa did have some warning signs for him. And even though there is clearly at least some interest In the alternatives, if you count them all together, it was about half of voting Republicans in Iowa who at least were looking at other people. Those people might have some MAGA-type talk and credentials, but they still were not Trump. And in New Hampshire, which is the electorate that looks more like the general election that the Republicans would need to compete for, we're seeing some interest in Nikki Haley. So it is worth remembering, whether you're really a big political nerd or not, that the polls and the pundits and the smug process that tells you to tune out next week or it's over is not based on anything other than a failed and broken habit.
Feel any better? I have already put evac on alert. He's ready to go if it comes to that. General, I can assure him.
Hey, General, let me into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Wheelie.
Sir, come on, when is it not, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the dough. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And, oh yeah. I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so damn good on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion. Security, please bring him up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. What's readiness? What was his name? What was it? Evac, sir. Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy, sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark aircraft. General! General! We need to evac immediately. Evac everything.